We got Utah too, and I mean, you guys knew who was going to be number one. I mean, this is no secret. I know this is the Bruin Bible, but I have to say, this might be one of the most deep receiving cores I have ever seen.
The number one and number two on this list is both USC. That you can drive a train between number one and number two on this list. The gap between number one and number two on this list is greater than the gap between number two and number 12 on this list. When you look, this receiving core reminds me of 2001 Miami in terms of their roster construction, where you're talking about third string guys that are going to make the pros. I mean, when you look at their first team here, Will, Addison obviously goes without saying, Blitnikoff winner, 100 catches, 1,593 yards, 17 touchdowns. Mario Williams, 5-star, home run threat, 35 catches, 384 touchdowns. And then when you factor in Kyle Ford at 6'5", who's going to have a breakout year with Caleb Williams, he's sort of that next version of Drake London from a physical perspective. And so you got the smooth receiver, you got the guy who's going to get you the tough yards, and you got the home run guy. Then you go to the second team. The second team starts with Gary Bryant Jr. Thriller. We talk so much about Kaz Allen breaking out in that crosstown rivalry game. Gary Bryant Jr. on the USC side had over 150 yards in that game. He has 44 catches, 579 yards, and led the team with 7 touchdowns outside of Drake London. And he's not even going to crack the starting lineup in terms of the receiving room. And then you got Tahj Washington, who was a star on Memphis. This guy's the 5th wide receiver. And then you got Brenden Rice, who was the treasured recruit of Colorado. He's the 6th wide receiver. There is a very credible argument to be made if you just took Bryant, Tahj Washington, Brenden Rice, and their recruits. That's the second best receiving core in the Pac-12, and they're the backups on this team. You could drive a train between number one and number two here.
It is absolutely the most embarrassment of riches maybe this conference has ever seen at one position. It's always been USC when it comes to receivers, at least since in my lifetime. The only wide receiver taken number one in the NFL draft, Keyshawn Johnson. When I was conscious enough to start following football, Mike Williams was that guy, Dwayne Jarrett, Steve Smith, and then all the way to the 2010s on up, whether it's Nelson Aguilar, Marqise Lee, Michael Pittman, Drake London. The list goes on and on. USC is the, wide receiver U. I don't think there's any argument for that nationally, even as just alone in the Pac-12 as a whole. Man, this list is so deep, you even forgot one transfer that came, and it's Terrell Bynum. 26 catches, 436 yards, and averaging 16.8 yards a catch. A transfer from Washington that would have made that core even deeper. This list
think about this for a second. What you just mentioned, Terrell Bynum has better stats than Chris Hudson of Oregon. Chris Hudson's going to be the number one at Oregon to start the season. And USC's number 7 had better stats last year than Oregon's number 1. Just think about that for context.
It's Jeff Bezos just dominating over the average man. That is how big this gap is in terms of the talent level at SC to the second best team within the conference at wide receiver. And I know you mentioned Addison. The numbers are 100 catches last year, 1,600 yards, 17 touchdowns. It's the way he does it, too. He's not the physically imposing receiver. This guy's 6'0", 175 pounds. He is just a phenomenal route runner and can beat you deep on the speed. This guy was 3rd all-time in the history of PFF in deep receiving yards, which is catches over 25-plus yards on a passing route.
Addison plays like Marvin Harrison. And when you talk about the smooth route running and just being a tactician and just understanding how to get open and just understanding defense, because he's not physically imposing size or speed or hand size or catch radius. And Marvin Harrison was the same way, but Marvin Harrison could just do it all and just understood the game. And Addison has kind of that feel to him. Long way to go, but he's got that element to him.